International Space Station. And just like you said, it's to that nominal ascent is the most efficient path, basically, to get to the International Space Station, so that there is leeway or flexibility for situations like this, where these hold points are built in and that margin is available if necessary. So once again, Dragon continuing to hold there at waypoint 2, 20 meters away from the zenith port of the International Space Station. Live views coming from inside Dragon Endeavour. They're on the left-hand side of your screen. We have Commander Steve Bowen on that seat to the left, and to his right is Woody Hoberg, who is the pilot. It seems like they have their arms up, but they are in microgravity, so their hands are actually just floating there. It's a pretty comfortable position. That view on the left-hand side of your screen is coming from the Dragon capsule that is on the right-hand side of your screen. It's a thermal image of that zenith port, which is the intended destination. In this view, we should be able to see some of that, some of the firings of the Draco thrusters as Dragon maintains its position there at waypoint 2. As I mentioned before, this view is a little deceiving because we can't see, planet Earth for that frame of reference. So it looks like everything is just at a standstill, but of course it's orbiting Earth, meaning it's going incredibly fast. But still in position, or it looks like it's still with relative position to the ISS.
Right. It kind of looks black too. Of course, there are plenty of stars in the sky, but a lot of what's being played with the camera on the outside of the station is exposure. The sun is illuminating the side of the capsule, so we're not able to make out a lot of the stars. There's also atmosphere that affects that. So that's why you see that blackness. But there's going to be a lot of sunlight from where we are now. The station is 261 statute miles over the Mediterranean Sea. It just passed the southern coast of Italy on a southeastern track. And it's morning over in Europe, so it's going to make its way southeast. We're going to be passing over Egypt soon and make our way down. And we'll be in this sunlight position for a while. And a reminder that this is joint operations between the teams here in Hawthorne and, of course, the teams over in the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Houston, Texas. Everybody's got to give their go before proceeding with docking today. But once we hear that, we'll start to see motion. The Dragon will make its way from this view down. It'll make its way towards the Earth.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for status.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
We have a software override command that will allow Dragon to continue to docking. Again, teams have verified that Dragon is in the correct docking configuration. Ground will be sending the override command. Ground will then pull for another go, and then brief crew when ready to resume. How copy?
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, you were cut off.
Copy, Dragon. I'll repeat. We have a software override command that will allow Dragon to continue to docking. Again, teams have verified that Dragon is in the correct docking configuration. Ground will be sending the override command, and then pull for another go, and then brief crew when ready to resume. How copy?
SpaceX Dragon, copy, I'll understand, and we'll be ready for the pull and our actions.
All right, good news there coming from SpaceX core David Huang, letting the Crew-6 know, letting the Crew-6 crew, letting them know that the teams have worked through that override.
Station Houston on the big loop for comm.
ahead on 2, David.
Hey, Josh, just for your essay, you may have noticed in voice to us that we don't have space ground 3 and 4. That's because we've gone to our KU mask. We'll regain that at 0651, just for your essay. We don't need it for docking.
Okay, appreciate the heads up. 0651 to get KU back.
As we were saying before, we just got confirmation that the teams here on the ground will be pushing that software override through up to Dragon Endeavour, and that there will be another poll for go for docking, and the crew will then receive final instruction, basically that final go. So that if that override is being pushed through currently, that should take hopefully just a couple of minutes. As we said before, we had 2 hours of margin to hold here at waypoint 2, 20 meters away from the International Space Station. So we're still well within that margin. And as the SpaceX core indicated, that the teams were looking to get it done right, not fast. And so we're pleased to hear that the solution has been identified and is being pushed up to the capsule.
And that call you heard from Mission Control in Houston up to Josh Cassada is confirming that the KU link is currently masked until 12:51 a.m. Central Time, 10:51 p.m. Pacific Time. So right now the teams on both sides
Station
are pulling.
Houston on 2 for Frank and exercise. Due to the exercise constraints with the hold we're in, we're going to defer your 0T2 ops and your ARED that are hard scheduled for today.
Copy on 2, thank you.
That was Frank Rubio aboard the space station confirming. Unfortunately, he's going to have to delay his exercise for the day. The T2 being the stationary bicycle, ARED being the sort of a weightlifting machine that's configured for microgravity, so it uses hydraulics. But they want to minimize loads, impacts, vibrations on the International Space Station for docking operations, so they're going to hold on that for a little bit. I was mentioning the KU mask. That's going to be in effect until 10:51 p.m. Pacific, 12:51 a.m. Central, which means as the teams are polling, you can see the flight control teams here in Hawthorne. They're also polling with the International Space Station flight control teams to proceed past waypoint 2 in for a docking. If we do that very shortly, we may not get KU, which means we may not get views. It depends on if we get pass over a ground station or not. We may get views from the Dragon. Not a requirement to press in for docking. There's a lot of other factors that are more important than getting those views. So we'll see. We'll stand by for those teams to continue their poll.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for approach 2.
SpaceX Dragon, any copy?
Ground has pulled go for approach 2. Confirm crew readiness for final approach and that visors are down. As a reminder that once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted. How copy?
SpaceX Dragon copies all. Our visors are down and the crew is ready to resume.
Copy, Steve. Dragon is go to command resume.
All right, so great news there coming from SpaceX Core indicating that poll for docking was conducted.
SpaceX Dragon, we have resumed.
The poll for docking was conducted once again.
Dragon is in approach 2 prep.
Go for docking, and we're now in prep for to approach the International Space Station.
It's a 30-second pause before the Draco engines start firing to get us closer to the International Space Station. So we'll hear another call once Dragon is in motion. Now again,
Dragon is in approach 2 and continuing to station.
here we go.
Station Houston on the big loop. Dragon is resuming approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
station copies. We are in steps 5 and 6.
Now, if we can bring you views from inside the capsule, again, we will try. Unfortunately, we don't have any live views at the moment. However, those crew displays that the crew has available to monitor progress, they actually will have a live camera basically showing how close they are to that the zenith port, and they are able to monitor the progress again, being able to see which Draco thrusters are firing when. But we're looking forward to seeing the crew continue on this docking journey.
Now, even though we don't have views, we are getting telemetry, so we're coming up on, we are making some motion. It's just a little bit, we did increase a little bit of distance while we were at the hold point, so we got out to about 25 meters, so now we're making our way in. We're at about 20 meters now. We'll stand by for contact and capture. You heard that reiteration from the ground of that crew hands-off point. That will be called up to the crew. It's called CHOP. They make an acronym for it. So you'll know that the crew cannot issue an abort command at that point. But right now we're looking good. 18 meters in closing.
Live view there of SpaceX Mission Control. That is where we've been hearing those core updates come from. But at this point in time, Dragon is back to closing that distance, as Gary said, closing that distance for docking. There will be a soft capture first, then followed by hard capture. We saw that soft capture ring in earlier views of the Dragon capsule. So that soft capture ring will
10
be...
meters.
Copy, 10 meters.
A call from inside Dragon Endeavour, 10 meters in closing. We'll get those calls from the crew, including CHOP, and then confirmation of contact and capture. Visuals are not a requirement to proceed with docking, so even though we don't have KO, even though we don't have videos, we do have plenty of telemetry coming down to give us the confidence we need. And of course, we have the crew aboard Dragon Endeavour and International Space Station that are witnessing the action now.
Once again, Dragon is making its way, closing the final meters between itself and the International Space Station, specifically the Zenith port.
SpaceX Dragon 5 meters.
Copy, 5 meters.
Only 5 meters to go.
It's a slow and methodical approach. Progress seems to be good for the crew aboard Dragon. Of course, Josh Cassada and Nicole Mann are inside the International Space Station monitoring. There are safeguards in place if needed, but right now we're looking pretty good.
Once again, we'll bring those live views whenever we have them. Unfortunately, they're not available at this moment in time, but those visuals are not required.
SpaceX Dragon 2 meters.
Copy, 2 meters.
The crew is monitoring, as you can tell from those callouts from inside Dragon Endeavour. Those
1 meter.
last meter to go.
Copy, 1 meter. Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, soft capture confirmed.
SpaceX Dragon copies. Thank you.
That soft capture occurring at 10:40 p.m. Pacific time, 12:40 a.m. Central time. International Space Station and Dragon were 261 statute miles off the coast of Somalia in Eastern Africa.
It's great news there. Now, of course, as we were saying before, everything is scheduled. It's step by step, and there are still a few steps to complete before Dragon.
Soft capture ring retraction in progress.
Still a few steps to go before Dragon is securely attached to the station. So there we just heard the call out that soft capture ring retraction was in progress.
That soft capture ring is pulling the Dragon Endeavour in closer for the next series of steps, which will be closing those hooks. There are 12 hooks, and they'll close 6 at a time. And once all 12 hooks are engaged, that confirms a hard capture. In the meantime, on the International Space Station side, they're working an intricate series of attitude control maneuvers to allow minimal loads during this ring retraction process, using gyros and other thrusters, mostly disabled at this point.
In the next couple minutes, we'll hear updates regarding the hard capture sequence. We should hear a call out in the next minute or two indicating that the hard capture sequence has begun. That will take about 4 minutes, and at that point in time, we will have a complete hard dock, at which docking will basically be complete at that point in time. Of course, more time before the side hatch is opened and the crews get to greet each other on board station. But as of right now, we have had confirmation that the soft capture ring retraction is complete. That's the part that, as Gary just said, pulls the Dragon capsule in toward the International Space Station. And then next up, we will have that hard capture sequence start.
Flight controllers are monitoring the soft capture ring retraction, and everything's looking good so far. They mentioned the soft capture ring. The Dragon is inside the vestibule, so that's important. It's pulling it in, lining up those hooks to begin that hard capture sequence that you were mentioning. Again, visuals are not a requirement for this process. We're getting plenty of telemetry and confidence from the teams on the ground. Things are proceeding nominally. Of course, those readouts from the crew aboard Dragon and the International Space Station monitoring as well. Everything's looking good.
If you've recently joined, Dragon had a pretty smooth journey to the International Space Station. They launched from Kennedy Space Center.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop, ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
Flight control teams monitoring a good ring retraction. Right now they're pausing to allow International Space Station attitude to configure. I mentioned a series of intricate maneuvers to make sure to minimize the loads on the Dragon through the docking process. Once those hooks are engaged, they can go back to a nominal configuration. But in the meantime, there's this pause. Of course, we'll be standing by for that hard capture sequence. We did upload that software override for the hooks. That'll be an important milestone to make sure that those hooks engage for a hard capture, so we'll stand by and wait for that. But again, we did have a soft capture confirmed at 10:40 p.m. Pacific time, 12:40 a.m. Central time. And again, the ISS and the Dragon were off the coast of Somalia in Eastern Africa at the time of docking.
As I was saying earlier, the crew had a pretty smooth ride up to the International Space Station, lifting off just roughly over 24 hours ago from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And yeah, pretty smooth ascent phase. We did have that issue with Hook 5.
Dragon Station, this is Houston on the Big Loop. MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
SpaceX Dragon copy.
Yeah, so the hook driving is now about to begin. As I was saying, there was a software override that was sent up to the Dragon capsule from the teams on the ground in order to resolve the faulty sensor on hook 5. That hook 5 being one of the hooks that is now being used to drive that hard capture. All in all, aside from that minor issue that the teams were able to resolve in a few minutes, a pretty smooth ride to space. I'm sure they're excited to eventually open the door and see their friends.
The hooks are deployed. There are 12 total hooks to help us have a hard capture, and they're in 2 sets of 6 called gangs. The first gang of 6, we're hearing good calls from the flight control teams. They are driving as expected.
Once again, Dragon Endeavour now underway with the hard capture, the driving of those 12 hooks, as Gary just mentioned, operating in 2 sets of 6. The first set sounds like everything is going well. The second set to follow. And once hard capture is complete, that basically means that Dragon will have docked. Now, Dragon has driven itself autonomously to the space station. So at this point in time, the crew continues to monitor the progress as those hooks drive. And they are following along with their crew displays and, of course, listening in to information being provided from the teams here at SpaceX Mission Control, which you see there on your screen, as well as from the mission control teams at Johnson Space Center over in Houston, Texas.
Now, of course, we were holding at that 20-meter marker for some time. So if you're following along, we're going to continue our coverage to make sure that the hooks drive.
Station on the big loop we see is complete with 1.102, and we've got about 45 minutes to get this place straightened up.
Josh, we copy and concur. Sounds good.
All right, and from the ground teams, we heard the first gang of 6 hooks have driven, and they look like they're in a good configuration. The second set of hooks, another 6, are currently driving. We'll continue to monitor the progress of those. Again, once these hooks are driven, that is that hard dock to the International Space Station. It kicks off another series of steps. They'll be able to doff or take off their suits once the Dragon is fully engaged to the International Space Station for that hard dock, and they'll go through a series of steps to get those hatches open, and that'll take some time. Again, we were holding at that 20-meter hold point for quite some time, so if you're following along with our coverage and want to continue with our coverage, we'll hand it over to the Johnson Space Center to take us through hatch opening and the welcome ceremony. Everything is shifting slightly to the right. If you're following in Central Time, we're looking at hatches open approximately 2:18, and then a welcome ceremony around 3 a.m. Central Time. Of course, those are approximate. They'll have to go through the procedures, and we'll monitor KU, but just to give our viewers a good indication of what we're looking at so far, for those who want to stick around and see the astronauts of Expedition 68 welcome Crew-6, who are also joining Expedition 68.
That's right. So as we said, the second set of hooks is currently driving. The first set got good readout there, and sounds like that first set of 6 is complete. The second set of 6 now underway. And as Gary mentioned, still a number of steps to go through prior to egressing Dragon capsule and greeting their friends on board the International Space Station, such as being able to doff their suits. They'll be able to take their suits off and store them.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, docking sequence complete. or hard capture complete. Correction.
SpaceX Dragon copy, hard capture complete.
Beautiful view there from the cameras on board the International Space Station. That is the Crew-6 capsule, as it has just completed the hard capture. Docking sequence not quite yet complete, but hard capture is complete. That is the zenith port of the ISS.
That's a great indication of the hooks, too. All 12 hooks are engaged in place, looking good. Next series of steps, that soft capture ring that was used in the first leg of the docking sequence is going to retract. There's also an umbilical that is deployed from the Dragon and connects the Dragon to the International Space Station. Dragon at this point has been relying on its batteries and the solar arrays that you can see. That black portion of the unpressurized trunk, that from this view is sort of at the top of where the Dragon is. It's been relying on battery power, but once it's hooked up, it'll draw some power from the International Space Station, which of course has solar arrays to provide plenty of power through once they configure the Dragon for the quiescent stage, where it will remain for approximately 6 months while the Crew-6 astronauts become expedition members and conduct science, maintenance, and upgrades for the next 6 months in 2023.
So at this point in time, we're just waiting to hear the confirmation that the docking sequence is completed. We're expecting the core to give a call to the crew to indicate that they can doff their spacesuits and just to let them know that that entire docking sequence is complete. We did get confirmation that the hard capture portion was complete. So awaiting that awaiting that call from SpaceX core. Once again, that is the Crew-6 capsule that just completed that hard capture with those 12 hooks.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop. Docking sequence complete. Crew Dragon Endeavour, Steve, Woody, Sultan, Andre. After a brief scenic detour, welcome to the International Space Station.
SpaceX Dragon copies, we're happy to be here.
On behalf of SpaceX, it has been a pleasure working with you. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connection shortly. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012 and will bring cameras external.
SpaceX Dragon copies, and we'll be picking up 4012. Thanks very much for getting us here.
All right, great news there from SpaceX core indicating that Dragon has completed its docking sequence. The spacecraft.
Dragon, this is Houston on the big loop. Sultan, Andre, Woody, and Steve. Ahlan wa sahlan, Dobry Pajalavat, and welcome to the International Space Station. From your training teams, your execution teams, and your friends and family, we're all so incredibly proud of you and are excited for your expedition. You guys really are living testimony that the ISS is a joint human effort, and your unique crew truly exemplifies that. Now let's work towards getting this hatch open so you can go hug your crewmates.
Houston Dragon copies all. Thank you very much. And we're looking forward to a very good increment.
So now that
Dragon on Dragon ground, no response required. Cameras are exterior.